Hello again and welcome to From the BOL End. I'm Simon Evans and I'm here with a full squad this week. Chris Bowden, Justin Connolly, Paul Woodhouse and Andrew Greaves here with me for the Burnley Football Podcast. And we've got a lot to get through this week because it's been the transfer activities really started heating up. We've had deals and announcement videos and it's all going on. So let's get right into it. First big deal really this week. Zeki Amdouni coming in from FC Basel. A really interesting one. Came a bit out of the blue, I think. But Greavesy, what do you make of that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it? I mean, we'd kind of been focusing on the guy at Metz, who I think, we were talking about last week as being kind of exactly what we were looking for. And then friend of the podcast, Sasha, and secondary friend of the podcast, Fab, both kind of came out suddenly with this, this Amdouni link. And then all of a sudden it's done. But it's been 2 months in the making by the sounds of things. The interview with him, they said, when did you first hear about it? And he said the last couple of months have been important. The coach wanted me. I think both Sasha and Fab both said that company had been instrumental in terms of giving Zeki a call and kind of selling him the vision of here. So I think it just goes to show that I think quite a lot of these people were being linked with in public. As Sasha was talking about, this is the policy is kind of going after lots. I'm wondering whether companies using a lot of these as smoke screens and it's allowing us to do these deals behind the scenes. But again, probably I'm not quite sure what the record transfer is, but I think we're talking 18 million euros, roughly 15 million quid. So at least I think equaling the Burnley transfer record, if not breaking it for the first time this week, before we've broken it again, probably today on Thursday.
Unbelievable money flying around Turf Moor boards. No, I mean this is pretty unprecedented stuff, isn't it? But what do we know about Amdouni really?
Precious little before this week. He's I'd say he's come completely out of left field. He's he's not one I watched during the under-21 championships with Switzerland. He's very, very good record with Ball in the Conference League, where he was the top goal scorer. But just reading sort of descriptions of him, and he sounds like the type. I think the quote here I've got is undoubtedly one of the most intriguing forward prospects outside of Europe's top 5 leagues. He's got this good dribbler. Got that sort of explosive pace, can manipulate a yard, which is we spoke about last week. It's going to be critical in the Premier League. Good on both feet. From the sort of goals clips I've seen, he's quite he's quite adept in the air as well at finding him. You look at the sort of goals Michael Owen used to score for a lad his size, just finding that little yard inside the box and finishing with his head. But I think he was in a couple of people's sort of teams of the tournament from the under-21s alongside James Trafford, which can only bode well. But already spent more than almost double last summer's spend, which was Burnley's highest summer spend ever. So it's I say credit where credit's due to the chairman. Is they are bringing in exciting young talent, and it looked like they might make a few quid going forward with them as well.
Shall we have a little ripple for little Al? Is he doing well? Or are we not? Board says it's bodes well, Justin.
Well, I've got to agree with him there. I mean, he sort of fits the profile, doesn't he? I mean, he's young. We can coach him to improve. He feels like a bit of a last summer signing, doesn't he? One of these that comes completely out of nowhere that nobody's ever heard of. All I know about him is the YouTube video that I think probably everybody's seen. But I think, although I think he's scored a lot of goals, hasn't he, since the World Cup? And he's got a really good record. But from what I can gather from what people are saying about him, he's not like an out-and-out striker. He's more of a sort of number 10 type. And companies' sort of comments about him are all about how he's good with, he makes quite a lot of assists and stuff like that. So it's an exciting signing. It's the sort of player that we need. It's the sort of player that we want. And I just can't wait for this season to start. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I did speak to a Swiss journalist, and I'm hoping we'll get a guest on in the next week or two to talk about him in some depth, but couldn't get it done for this week. But what I did manage to glean was, yes, he does have that explosive pace over the first yard or two, but he's not quick over longer distances. So he's not a pacey sort of number 9. He is he likes to play in the hole, really, behind the striker. But the key phrase and this was without any prompting, the key about Burnley's system or anything, the person I was talking to didn't know much about Burnley at all. The key phrase I picked up was, he's very good at bringing wingers into the game. I thought, right, okay, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Woody, are you excited by this one? I think most of us are intrigued, if not excited.
I think intriguing is a good word, isn't it? Yeah, but it's also quite exciting. And like everybody else, those 3 initial goals on his YouTube clips, he had like a right foot like Steve Harper. You know, there was like a little bit of bobbling going on. He looks like he's got a lucky right foot, exactly.
Genuinely two-footed, I was told. Genuinely two-footed.
Yeah, looked it.
And he's got the celebration, and he's got the kind of Archer celebration, which the kids will be doing downtownly, hopefully after a while. But what I saw from them clips is how deep he comes looking for the ball. You know, he's coming to the halfway line looking for the ball and trying to, you know, as you said, Simon, bringing wingers into it. You look at some of the extended clips of him, but scored, as Bod said, plenty of goals in that Conference League, you know, scored home and away in the semi-final against Fiorentina, I think it was, which I think they just lost, obviously. But yeah, I think, you know, clearly little Al has found the keys to the kind of the dry store cupboard at Turf Moor. That garlic was kind of keeping the powder dry. It looks like Alan's blasted the doors off Michael Caine style, and the dry powder is flowing out onto Brunshaw Road and beyond. And we're probably not done yet. I think we'd worked out 56 million, we said just before. Thanks to our friends over at Up the Clarets. Someone on the Up the Clarets message board had worked out we'd already spent 56 million plus the extra 4 for James Trafford.
Which must be a record
for a window. Yeah, you'd think so. And still 30 million off what I was predicting in the first podcast, I think. So a couple more £15 million signings yet to come.
You look at that strike force now. You got, you know, if Amdouni likes playing as a 10, but, you know, capable with his back to goal by the sounds of things. You've J-Rod, who, you know, could do either, but probably better as a 10. Weghorst, again, he sort of likes to drop deep. With your Foster, who likes, you know, he can carry the ball, dribble with it. And have we got that sort of out and out? You know, does he want an out and out target man? And does this mean no Nathan Teller if Amdouni can play wide as well? It's you'd be surprised now, wouldn't you, if he's going to, especially if Nathan Redford comes through the door as expected. But it'd be a shame. I think a lot of people would be disappointed if Teller didn't make the move permanent.
Yeah, that would be a shame. Yeah, definitely. What a bit of business from Basel as well, by the way. They had him on loan with an option to sign, and they signed him in May. It's now July. So I don't know what transfer fee they signed him for. We'll have to have a look on Transfermarkt or something afterwards. But that must go down as one of the best bits of business any club in Europe will do this summer, is to sign a guy in May and then move him for multiple amounts of that in July. Obviously was there on loan, and all his goals came in the second half of the season, didn't they? He really hit a hot streak. So you just sort of think, you know, we've got him at the right time there, because he has a full season of that, and his value is going to be even more, isn't it? You know, it would have been. Yeah. Let's. We've also had the keeper through the door. Actually, before we go on to James Trafford, what about the reveal video for Zeki Amdouni, though? I mean, we've seen a few of these now, and they've become quite popular online. Probably we're not the demographic that it's aimed at, but I did find it a bit odd, the Teletubbies one, I have to say. Woody, what were your thoughts about Tinky Winky and Poe and Zeki?
I mean, what the fuck was that about? I mean, it was fantastic in its own little way. There's a little short reveal, you know, as he went up the Clarets. It was very nice, but yes, it was. I think it was off in a nicely bizarre way. Let's be kind to it.
Justin, you tend to appreciate these creative marketing things.
Well, I tell you what, as I increasingly these days, I come to these things, and the phrase that comes to mind is, "This is not aimed at me." I thought there was some sort of joke involved, that maybe he had a nickname or something that was something to do with the Teletubbies, but apparently no. It's just sort of a random left field, odd kind of way of revealing him. I think they did so well, didn't they, with these videos last season? There were some really great ones, and we're going to talk about another one that hit the mark as well later on. But this one just seemed really, really quite strange, and I'm not sure whether Amdouni himself will appreciate being associated with the Teletubbies in this way going forward.
Yeah, I really do hope they sat him down and said, so what we're going to do, Zeki, is we're going to have the Teletubbies on, and then we're going to say, who's Burnley signing today? And then you're going to appear and go, up the Clarets. And he went, yeah, right, fair enough. I really hope they had that conversation, because if they didn't, but I think it also tells us how much dressing rooms have changed, doesn't it, really? Because can you imagine that in the dressing rooms of the 80s or the 90s or even 10 years ago?
Here comes Tinky Winky.
The stick he would have got. But these days, I don't think it's quite like that, is it? But yes, the one for that you're referring to there obviously was for James Trafford, and that move has been completed. We talked at quite a bit of length about James Trafford last week, so we know what we're getting, but there it is. It's actually happened. We've spent an absolute fortune on a goalkeeper who's never played above League One level. Greavesy, I mean, what does it feel like now that it's sunk in that we've actually signed him? And it does pretty much look, from the way they promoted that one, that he's going to be number one.
Yeah, well, we know he's taking the number one shirt, don't we? I think that's the what I did quite like is they did the kind of pre-reveal tweet, basically saying kind of can't stop me now with some shopping bags, and then did a keep a clearance tweet literally just before 6 o'clock, which I thought was quite a nice nod, because I think we were all a little bit miffed the last time they used shopping bags on a tweet and it didn't turn out to be James Trafford. But I mean, we were all quite excited, weren't we, over the last couple of weeks when we spoke about Trafford, and I just think, you know what I mean, the more I think about that as a signing, and the confidence in which he speaks about, what he wants to do, learn here, take every day as he goes, but what company talks about in terms of being very confident, mature. I just think it's as Justine said, I'm just excited for the season now. These two signings this week have just kind of, skyrocketed the excitement. Obviously, we go to Belgium this weekend, then we've got that run of friendlies. Man
European
City at
tour.
home. Man City at home on that Friday night just cannot come quickly enough for me. I can't wait to get started. Even if we end up getting his arse handed to us by City on that first day of the season, I don't think that will set the tone, but I just think, let's get going now. I'm really excited. And Trafford, he is. I think he's going to be the real deal. Famous last words. We'll clip that up when it's all gone horribly wrong by November, and we've got Will Norris back or something to help us out. But there we go.
Boards, your thoughts on the James Trafford deal being done?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, not even talking from a Burnley slant, I think the lad himself thinks he's going to be England's number one in the not too distant future. And he'd obviously have to climb above a fair few contenders. I think Jordan Pickford's been set in stone for sort of 6-7 years now. You've Nick Pope, who see different attributes, and your Hendersons and people like that. But if he performs well, which we expect him to, certainly within the system, judging from what we've seen, over the summer with the under-21s, and like I say, what everyone talks about, this character, this self-belief. There's no reason to suspect he won't hit the ground running. If he does, every chance he's going to be elevated to that senior squad sooner rather than later. Which I said we were talking before in the chat. I mean, you look back, if he does get that, his ambition, his dream, Burnley will have had, say Tom Heaton, Burnley's first England international for since the mid 70s, and obviously Popey in that range. Had Joe Hart, but he didn't make an England appearance in that time he was with Burnley. But Trafford as well, it's like a factory for goalkeepers.
It is, but Southgate's never seemed to particularly want to He certainly didn't press the button on Pope ahead of Pickford, did he? When there was times when Pope was in unbelievable form in the Premier League and Pickford was having a shaky spell, and he still went with Pickford, didn't he?
It's again style of play, isn't it? It's we all know as good as Pope is, his feet is absolutely appalling, and there's no getting away from that. And we've seen that in the England game, in the England games he's played. You're petrified when he has the ball at his feet. He's gonna, make a rig. He's just not comfortable.
World class with his gloves and
I love him to pieces.
League Two with his
absolutely,
feet.
Yeah, magnificent at every other aspect of the game. But in the modern era, this is where we're at, isn't it? If you can't, can't play with,
It's a bit like now goalkeeping's become a bit like cricket was 20 years ago, where you could no longer really be considered for selection for the top teams if you were no good at fielding. You used to be able to get away with being a sort of, Vic Marks sort of off spinner who maybe wasn't brilliant in the field or anything. But now you're expected to be really up to scratch, and it's this the massive difference between the lower levels and the top levels, isn't it? Being able to do absolutely everything, and goalkeepers now, that's why United have signed the lad they've signed from Inter Milan Onana, because of his feet. Onana, yeah. Woody, what do you make of all this goalkeeping ability with the feet? I mean, you would think in Kompany's way of playing that it just makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but ironically enough, as soon as I turned him on during the semi-final, I saw him move it into Rose Ed. He had like Nick Pope boots on. He had an absolute shocker. But saying that, this idea of almost being a secondary kind of Beckenbauer, we've gone from like the Besant thing, haven't we? Where it was, just kind of drop the ball outside your box, and we thought that was a huge revelation and revolution in football. But now to see, the likes of Muric and everybody else in the Premiership, if you aren't arguably one of the better passers in the side, you aren't going to get gloves, are you? Because at the end of the day, the idea is if you've pushed further up the pitch, they don't have to make a damn save, do they? But yeah, it's a very different game, isn't it? These days.
It is, and I think fans have got used to it now, because even Alisson at Anfield, when I covered some Liverpool games early on in his time there, and the fans were like jittery then, even though he's very good at that, and he's a Brazilian keeper, and you could even feel at Anfield that similar to how it was with Muric at the start of last year at the Turf, where the fans were a bit like, just get rid, But I think over the last season or two in football, fans have just got used to that now, haven't they? I mean, it's just the way the game's played now, Justin. No,
absolutely, of course it is. I mean, it's how Pep's changed the game in this country, isn't it? It's not just goalkeepers who are expected to play. Well, effectively, you're a sweeper and a goalkeeper, aren't you? You're a goalkeeper when you haven't got the ball, and you're a sweeper when you have got it. But it's the same thing that he does with these inverted fullbacks, where when you haven't got the ball, you're a left back. When you have got the ball, you're a central midfielder, and you've got to be quick to make sure that you can switch between the two. And it's all about having players playing two different positions depending on what phase of play you're in. And from what everybody's saying about James Trafford, he can do that. He's brilliant at it, and he's also a great goalkeeper. So I genuinely think that this signing is the most exciting of all the ones we've had, even last season, and the players who've come in this season. I think because it goes beyond all those other signings, doesn't it? It's not like a sort of £3 million punt on a Benson or a Zeruri who you can train up. He's actually already being spoken about as being like the real deal. And if half of what people say about him is true, he will be England's number one in short order, and he'll immediately be worth a lot more than we paid for him. It feels like a dream to me, all this. It feels like how high expectations have gone for us. It feels like a dream. And I said it about Amdouni, but James Trafford coming into the side and the other players who we've signed, and I can't wait for it to start. It just feels like it's just, well, like I say, like a dream. I don't remember a time like it as a Burnley fan.
Have we got to the stage yet, though, before we go on to talk about some of the other signings? Have we got to the stage, though, where the squad is better than it was last year, given that we've lost Harwood Bellis, we've lost Teller, we haven't got Maatsen yet? Are we actually better than we were last year?
Who's going to answer that? I don't know.
I don't think we are yet, to be honest. I think that's the
well, we haven't got a left back yet, have we? So
yeah, exactly. It's Charlie Taylor who I don't think fits the system, and I think we all agree on that. Or it's Vitinho, who's a square peg in a round hole, being asked to do a job that he will do competently, but you need a little bit more than competence in that system. But that's the exciting thing. I think the thing with the Amdouni signing this week, that's the thing. I think we need another central midfielder. We've banged on about big, rangy centre midfielders. We need, I think, a bit more wing cover. I think we do need a number 9. I think we need a left back. You know, the shopping list is still got stuff that needs ticking off. But the Amdouni signing, which came out of absolutely nowhere 24 hours before, you know, he's appearing in a reboot of the Teletubbies, that's the interesting thing. And the dream that Justin talks about, that is the kind of, we don't know who we're going to wake up and get linked with. You know what I mean? We keep getting linked with all these players, and I'm not sure if we were ever really that sold on Clark or Hamer. You know, we've not even talked about Bobby Thomas supposedly going to Coventry in a £2 million deal. I think if they're paying cash for him, it probably means we're not getting Gustavo Hamer. But I just wonder whether them players are the ones where we're using them to create a bit of a fuss, and that's just keeping people off the scent. I mean, you know, again, another signing I'm sure we'll talk about is the young Italian under-19 player from Espanyol, is it? You know, turning down Fiorentina and another team to come to Burnley, you know, it's that weird kind of, we're just doing business in public, kind of getting people excited. And, you know, I have to say most of those kind of signings don't feel massively inspiring because they're mainly championship players and there's a step up. But then the dream scenario is that company's just going to keep pulling aces from up his sleeve in the same way Sasha says he likes to do. He says company likes to spring a surprise, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, and a lot of these players. I mean, it's not a risk, is it? They're not a risk to sign these players because immediately they're coming for they're worth more than we pay for them the minute they pull the jersey on and start playing games. So, I mean, that goes double fold for James Trafford. Obviously, I was a bit nervous about whether that deal was going to go through, actually, because after his performance for England the other week, I did fear that somebody would drop in and trip us up on that. But obviously, the pull of company for these players, like you say, Greasy, you know, I think it was PSV that he turned down, the Italian lad, to come to Burnley. I mean, again, it's like dreamland, isn't it? But, you know, imagine that. Imagine that season, that summer when we signed Dale Stephens. Imagine telling somebody that
I was waiting for the Dale Stephens reference.
Imagine telling somebody that in 3 years' time this was going to be happening. It's almost unbelievable, but there we are. It's
and people still tell me that Sean Dyche, people still tell me Sean Dyche didn't perform miracles. You see, talk about what he had to work with that summer and to keep Burnley in the Premier League. But,
absolutely,
I think that's the new Blur album. Forget the Ballad of Darren. The new Blur album is going to be the Summer of Dale Stephens.
Summer of Dale. Yeah. I mean, joking aside, the excitement is that you still feel there's still, you know, even if, you know, say as we expect Nathan Redmond comes through the door, you still think there's going to be a centre mid, you know, and if it is Hamer or not, they're going to have to be spending that ballpark £15 million or so. But Hamer, for me, would fit the bill. You know, again, we're talking what do we need in the Premier League? You're going to be able to switch play quickly, and in that area, he's technically proficient. You know, he's good with dead balls. You know, it's going to be huge in the Premier League. But that ability to switch play, you know, imagine setting Zarori or Benson away, you know, 1-on-1 against an opposition fullback. It's going to be absolutely critical to our hopes, I think. And you know, certainly Cullen, you know, people like that can do that role. But you know, maybe a double pivot in there. I don't know. Remains to be seen. But best part 60 mil spent, and we think there's going to be probably another big hitter. Maybe it's absolutely staggering. Great times for a Burnley fan.
And no loans yet. And I think that's the key. I mean, he will use both Premier League loans. I'm almost certain that he will use both Premier League loans that were allowed, or both English loans. And I presume they will be loans from the Premier League. And that's before we've spoken about and who we might get on loan from foreign clubs as well. So, like you say, there's a couple more 15 million quids to be spent, I think. And that has got to be just, we're often accused of having an agenda and criticising Alan Pace unnecessarily. But I think the last 2 summers that the chairman has served up, even I'm starting to soften. And I'm a right miserable bastard.
Well, I think this is the moment where I have to inject some cynicism, some skepticism, some doubt, some gloom, perhaps. I don't know, or at least play devil's advocate
nothing
slightly.
Less.
Well, let's just throw this one in there. We're millions in debt, right? We've taken out loans. We're now spending millions on players, which presumably is borrowed money against possible revenues coming in and so on.
Oh, Simon.
Has anyone got any concerns that these young players we're signing for 15 million? If they don't work out, we don't get that money back. So there are risks involved in all transfers. But is it just something we have to do if we want to play at the big boys table, or is this a risk? Are we going to have a Peter Risdale conversation at some time where we say, well, it was a great ride, we enjoyed it while it happened, but yes, unfortunately, the bills have come in now? Or am I being unnecessarily negative there?
I think you have to. Yeah. You have to compete, haven't you? We've seen it over time that year on year it was just a struggle. Spending the bare minimum every year and like grinding it out, and that was, the genius of Sean Dyche. But like Villa today look like they're on the brink of another 40 million signing. Newcastle are spending, Harvey Barnes thick end of 40 million. Madison goes to Spurs, and and these aren't probably even considered marquee signings for their clubs. There's going to be some ridiculous business done before the end of August, and you've got to give yourself an opportunity to compete. And I'd agree with Justin. I think bare minimum. James Trafford's going to be worth what Burnley pay for him. If worst comes to the worst, and Burnley struggle and get relegated, maybe people like Bayer, there's going to be interest from home and abroad. I think just based on what he achieved last season, what he's going to achieve going further forward with the German under-21 side, etc. It's exciting times. They're going about it the right way. We're not sort of moaning and groaning about it's another veteran from Stoke that's going to do a job for us. It's we're talking about real, let's say, intriguing left field transfers here that really do well, the thrilling Burnley fans you can see on social media.
And I think the big thing is it's almost a 2-tier. Last year was exciting, lots of players, not massive transfer fees. I mean, Foster was the first big transfer fee. We picked up Zarori and Benson for a song, got a loan out of Bayer, and you know what I mean. So I think there is that kind of sensibility from Pace and the board to kind of go, you know what, last year when we didn't have much of a pot to piss in, because we were trying to service loans and debts and things like that, and we still had the payoff to Garlic and John B and all that lot, the scheduled payments. But this year, because we know, you're guaranteed that whack of money. We've talked a lot, obviously, about the JJ Watt and that being more publicity than perhaps financial, but we don't know for certain. But you just wonder kind of whether there's pockets of small bits of investment, 9 million quid from W88. Again, it's not huge amounts, but it's that, does that keep the wolves from the door from a interest payment point of view? We are betting the ranch more than we've ever done. But as Chris said, you don't bet the ranch. I think Luton and Sheffield United will really struggle, not because they've not got good managers, because I think they've both got cracking managers, not because they've not got good players, because I think they've got good players, but they're just not going to give themselves a chance to compete in that kind of table. And I think we'll probably talk about friendlies maybe later on, but I think everything that's geared towards the start of this season, those friendly fixtures are geared towards giving that team the best chance to assess itself against the teams we're going to be playing pretty much week in, week out. We're not going to be playing City week in, week out, United, etc. But I think the friendlies are set up to mimic that kind of almost mini league from 7th down to 12th, which is what we're going to be wanting to compete in. And that's where these signings, I think, are where we would want to see ourselves. We're not signing players cart horses or experienced pros, I should say, from Stoke or West Brom. I know we've signed O'Shea from West Brom, but he's not that model of previous. So, yeah, I think, a slight thawing perhaps of our attitude towards spending and borrowing. But I think we found, didn't we? I mean, Chris keeps mentioning the genius of Sean Dyche. It's only when you see how long we were in the Premier League, what we spent, who we brought in, what he got out of that side, that you do actually sit back and appreciate what Sean did, I think.
Absolutely. No, absolutely you do. And also, as part of that, though, people had enough of that, hadn't they, towards the end? I think people... That style of football, which was born out of the fact that Sean knew what kind of players he had to work with, that he didn't have money to go and spend and bring in higher quality. He always said, if you gave me the players, I'd play like Barcelona or whatever. He'd play a different style of football, perhaps. But I think there's only so long you can go where the fans are really pleased that you've got a backs against the wall draw and then scraped a win against Norwich that will keep you out at bottom 3 and so on. After 5 or 6 seasons of that, it did get a bit much, didn't it? So,
but Burnley are the only ones. If you look at, Blackburn fans got sick of Sam Allardyce, and they've been out of the Premier League for a decade. West Brom got sick of Pulis. They're not getting back to Premier League anytime soon. Stoke got sick of Pulis and went down Mark Hughes' road of signing, you players from Barcelona that hadn't quite made it there and trying to play exciting football and got relegated. And that none of them have bounced back. And it's to Burnley's credit that they've been able. This turnaround will be talking about for generations to come. How they re-energized the club in one summer and hit the ground running and romped to the Championship. It just absolutely, it's still not sunk in yet.
I do think that even that though owes an enormous debt to Sean Dyche, because what company is built on the foundations that Dyche laid, hasn't he? He himself has actually said, we don't want to throw all the good stuff out that was here. All that work ethic, all that sort of heart, all that stuff that Sean Dyche was
legs, hearts, and minds.
Legs, hearts, and minds. Yeah, all that stuff. It's still there, isn't it? It's still there.
Yeah, all of the signs are still up, aren't they? Bellamy said that. Everything Sean Dyche instilled in that training ground, which was made in his image, let's not forget, is still there. And I think that's right. I think we've been so swept away by company just in that. I don't think any of us have really taken. We've talked on the podcast before. We talked about kind of the dual style of football, and I think I listen back to the podcast sometimes. I think, oh God, you know what? We've not sat back and actually appreciated that it's a needs must situation. And actually, what Chris said then about Stoke and West Brom and Blackburn, it's only when somebody actually mentions that you go, bloody hell, you know what? And it is only those foundations you've just mentioned that, if they're not in place, if he leaves an absolute basket case of a club with no identity and things like that, company and Bellamy and co don't do what they did last summer. Absolutely.
And there's no question about that whatsoever. It was all built on what Dyche laid down. I mean, Mike Jackson's still there, isn't he? He's not.
Yeah, I'm really glad about that.
Yeah, he's really not thrown that out. And the spine of the team last season. Your Brownhills, your Corks. It looked for a time that Roberts wouldn't sort of survive the cold, but he forced his way back into the team. So even on the playing side of things, there's still a lot of Sean Dyche in what we're seeing on the pitch week to week.
Well, I mean, Ashley Barnes last year. I mean, it doesn't get a more Sean Dyche player than Ashley Barnes, really, does there? And company used him a lot. Maybe it didn't think he would do at the start, but he ended up doing because he's got enough pragmatism in him to realise he had an asset there last year. Yeah, I just think it is worth registering, and I do share being serious. I do share the enthusiasm and excitement about new signings coming in and the way we play football and everything about Company's Burnley and Alan Pace's Burnley. But there is a risk there. There is a risk. There is a risk in what's being done, and maybe we have to roll that dice, and probably we do. Otherwise, it's not much fun going up and having a relegation battle, losing it, going back down again, Company going somewhere else. I mean, we've kind of made our bed by going for Company, I think, because he's not the kind of bloke who is going to go and sign those kind of players that we used to sign and settle for, like, if we finish above 3 teams, we've done our job. He's not that kind of person, is he?
No, I think he still is a bit. He's still got a bit of that pragmatism, though, hasn't he? Because I think Nathan Redmond feels like a bit of a Sean Dyche style, Premier League quality, experience, and all that sort of stuff. He does feel a bit like that sort of player. So I don't think he's not splashing the cash and spending money wildly on these players without having a real sort of sense of where he wants to go and what he wants to do. It's not about that, is it? It's about what he wants and it's about the system that he wants to play. They obviously identify these targets. They have a list and they work down it and they get the best they can for the best price they can. It's all working for me. I'm enthusiastic about it, I have to say.
Yeah, no, I think we all are. Woody, Nathan Redmond. Let's move on to Nathan Redmond because he is a little bit more on the surface, a little bit more of an old school signing in the sense that, Dyche did go and pick up players like Aaron Lennon and Peter Crouch. Now, I know Redmond's only 29. He's not quite in that category yet, but it is a bit more of a sort of traditional signing, if you like. He's not a player who's unknown. He's got Premier League experience. Do we need him? Is it a good move? What do you think, Woody?
I mean, it sounds like a bit of a canny buy as much as anything else. Because like you say, we need that experience. We've got all these exciting under-21s, etc. And I think one of the reasons Barnes played such a massive role was his shithousery on the pitch. He knew how to handle those games and get them over the line and was showing these lads how to do it. We need a level of experience that we don't have throughout the side. So I think it could be a very smart move, and he still might be able to play a bit, so.
Yeah, he might. And of course, anyone who listens to this podcast would have heard the Nathan Redmond link some weeks ago. Here's what was on the podcast then with our expert from the Superliga, Chris Borden, telling us all about what he knew.
No, again, from speaking to say a reporter I've dealt with over in Turkey, who covers Besiktas exclusively. He contacted me a couple of weeks ago and suggested Nathan Redmond was one that Burnley might be pursuing, but it remains to be seen. He's still, I think he's 29 still, so I think we think he's a bit older than that because he's been around, since he was a young lad. He played in the under-21s with Ingsy. But if they can't land Teller, you only have to look at the times that Guardiola pulled him off the pitch and basically said, "Why aren't you doing that every week?" After one Southampton performance against City, he's capable. Very good player, and maybe you might be able to get him for cut price for a season or two, and probably if a deal for Teller isn't doable.
So yeah, Boards, you were right. Nathan Redmond, it does seem he's going to get over the line at the moment. It looks that way, not confirmed yet, but you were obviously in the know there.
Well, kudos to I'm going to murder the name now. It's Yagakli Yol, who I was in contact with during obviously Wout Weghorst's loan move to Besiktas and the forward that was coming to Burnley but ended up going to Besiktas, Muleka. who looks like he's going to exit Besiktas as well this summer. It didn't go down too well in Besiktas last season, but no, they're very in with Besiktas. Very early in the piece, said Vincent Kompany's got an interest in Nathan Redmond. Knew he was available on a free. That's it. Still only 29. Vividly remember him playing for the under-21s at Turf Moor with Danny Ings against Portugal, which had some. Portugal side had some real dummies in it, like Bernardo Silva and Ruben Neves and people like that. But they murdered Portugal that night, and the front players were out of this world. But Redmond's one of those. He can play as an out-and-out wide player. He can play as an inverted wide player. He can play sort of half spaces. That I think Vincent Kompany would like to sort of utilise in the Premier League. He's pacey. He's got that experience, and I just think it's an absolute no-brainer, to be honest. If that type of player is available for next to nothing, just his wages, basically. Same with Townsend. Obviously, he was training with the club recently. I'm not aware of his current situation, but if you were to bring a player like that in for a season, maybe, it's just a no-brainer. That just a bit of extra know-how to sort of cajole these exciting young talents over the season.
Yeah, it strikes me as a good away player, Nathan Redmond. When you're maybe a bit under the cosh and going to be playing on the break a bit more, he's a fantastic player on the break. I mean, his most memorable moments are breakaway goals for Southampton. I like the look of it. I like that. I've been saying we needed a bit of experience in there. I was thinking more of a central midfielder, but I think he fits the bill. Anyone else got any thoughts on Redmond?
Well, I think it's not just about what happens on the pitch, is it? It's about what happens on the training ground and what happens in the dressing room. And if you've got players like Townsend and Redmond around to guide these young players that we've brought in from leagues that aren't necessarily at the same level as the Premier League, that sort of experience can only rub off on these young players, even if Townsend or Redmond don't make that much of an impact on the pitch. So, like Chris says, it makes absolute sense for us to bring these players in if they're not costing us any money apart from the wages. Just for me, even if it's just for that, even if they're just maybe involved in a sort of cameo way on the pitch, because we've got a lot of inexperience, we've got a lot of young players, and they will benefit from the guidance that these old heads who've been there and done it all can bring.
Yeah, and you look at some of someone like Redmond. I think he's, we keep mentioning he's only 29. He feels like he's been around for a lot longer. But last season there's a great goal that he scored for Besiktas last season where he just picks the ball up and he's dropped his shoulder. He's running, an absolute thunderbolt into the bottom corner. You know what I mean? He's got that about him. He's got that real kind of ability to, move the ball quickly. We've talked about phases in play and kind of getting that ball moved quickly. If you're looking at playing a back three with a left winger who's going to track back and defend, Redmond's probably that kind of player as well, who's going to get his boots dirty. I think, if you're a young player coming to the Premier League, what a kind of group of senior pros to have in Redmond, Townsend. If we end up getting Andros Townsend on a short-term deal, Brownhill's been there, Cork's been there, Roberts has been there. Roberts has been to a World Cup. Rodriguez has played in the Premier League for several teams. You're going to need all that kind of little pockets. Johan Berg Gudmundsson, they're all them kind of players who, if Redmond can have the kind of season that Johan had last season, where he adapts the way he plays to be less of an out-and-out winger and somebody who comes perhaps more central, and it's a bit of that freer role going around that kind of final third. I think more than just cameos. I think he can play a real part in some of them games, against your likes of Uniteds perhaps, and your Cities, where it just needs shoring up a little bit so games don't run away from you if you do kind of fall behind early. That person who's going to grab that game by the scruff of the neck and say, look, I've been here with Southampton. I know what we need to do. Interesting. I don't think there's much difference in age between him and James Ward-Prowse, yet we're talking about Ward-Prowse going for multi-million pounds, yet Nathan Redmond, completely different players, of course. But I think it's perception sometimes, isn't it? In terms of Ward-Prowse and players at 29 still attracting big offers from Premier League clubs. And we're, on the sly, picking up a player who's got bags of Premier League experience and can still do it at the top level. I'm almost certain he can for nothing, which is just such a shrewd little signing. I've no doubt that company, phone call from Vincent was again the big driver for Redmond to choose Burnley.
Yeah,
I was at City. Yeah, I was at City. Sorry, when Ward-Prowse, he was a surprise pick. I'd just gone to watch Jay Rodriguez make his debut for Southampton at City, and obviously I think Ward-Prowse was a surprise selection. I think he played up front with Super Ricky Lambert, who I don't know whether he'd spoken kindly to his glass of water before the game or not that day. Some game.
There's something in the water in Southampton, isn't there? There's something in the water in Southampton. It's like Letizia and then him.
Yeah. They've all been drinking too much of it.
Another name that's been mentioned that's definitely the other end of it, it seems, Luca Colliesho, who is a multinational character, one of these lads who's eligible for 5 or 6 countries, I think. He's in Italy's under-19 team. He's been playing in Spain for Espanyol. He was called up by Canada to their full national team, but didn't appear for them. He's available, apparently, and we're interested. Apparently, one of these, still in the rumour category, I think, isn't it? But an attacking player, an interesting one. What do we think? What do we think about that one? Anyone know anything, or does he look like a player, Chris, for maybe the development squad, or you think somebody who's been called up for a national team?
If Mike McGrath's sort of reporting that it's pretty much concrete. You can believe.
Has he reported
Mike's
that?
as good as they get. Yeah, Mike's as good as they get on that.
It's not a rumor then; it's more than a rumor.
But I'm literally. I've not seen anything of him whatsoever. But you're looking at pedigree there. You say if you're selected for an exciting Canada side at his age, is a fair shout. If you got so Italy chasing your signature that they've just won the under-19.
Yeah, just won the under-19s championships.
Yeah, there's like says to have a host of countries chasing you. Your name is fair play. I'd say you come out of Espanyol. He's played at a few levels with their sides. It's £3 million or 3 million euros. Sounds like an awful lot of money for a development style player, but where on earth you see him fitting into the first team picture should he come in at present remains to be seen. I think that's probably one for probably a development type, but maybe on the fringes of the first team squad.
He's American, actually. He was born in Connecticut, I think, Woody. So we finally get Alan Pacey's American signing if this one goes through.
There you go. That'll be quite exciting, won't it?
Played in Manhattan, didn't he?
He did. Started his youth football in Manhattan. Yeah. So he's an interesting one, definitely. I mean, you just think, I don't know if he's a wide attacker, is what I heard. Not necessarily a winger, but a wide attacker. I guess you could say, that's what Teller was, isn't it, in a way? But in sometimes he was anyway. But we've not heard anything about Darko Chulinov, have we? Who's also one of those kind of players. So you wonder, he's still injured, isn't he? Is he?
I think he's still recovering from
sepsis.
Sepsis or some kind of blood poisoning. So I think it'll be probably a few months before he's kind of fit enough to resume training by the looks of things. But it's slightly bizarre that the club's not really said anything about Darko. It's just, he's out of hospital and things like that. I was talking to one of the Macedonian journalists on Twitter, the guy who kind of, I think, first talked about Cherlinov, and he said, he'd expect it to be kind of 8-12 weeks kind of into pre-season, into the season before he'd be in a position to start training again. And I think he picked up that, whatever it was, that infection whilst on international duty, didn't he?
Yeah. No, it's a shame, really, because if he were to have any chance for this season, he had to have a good pre-season, I think, really, didn't he? Having not really made much of an impact last year. The Martson saga continues. The latest rumours are that we might be willing to do a 1-year loan deal. Couldn't agree with Chelsea on prices. Chelsea are a bit uncertain about what they want to do in a few years' time with their 7 left backs that they've got. So they're playing it a bit careful. But Woody, Martin, it does feel like if we are going to burn some loan spots, that we need a left back, don't we?
You'd think so. Did I see that he was being linked with Forest, or that they'd tabled a bid around about the £15 million mark, weirdly enough? So, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that something has to be resolved somewhere along the line, don't it? But I suppose with Maatsen, you can probably hold on to it a little bit longer because he knows the system and it's not too difficult for him to come in slightly later during the window and acclimatise himself. But yeah, for 15, I'd take him.
Yeah, he's been linked with, I think, Forest, Benfica, a couple of others, but scored 2 for Chelsea against Wrexham on Tuesday night, I think it was, or Wednesday night. Wednesday night, yeah, he scored twice for Chelsea. But I think it's a bit of a scratch squad that's gone to America, hasn't it, for this Premier League summer series or whatever. I think Chelsea fans were whinging that it was possibly the worst Chelsea lineup for a squad that they'd seen, and I guess there's no pleasing Chelsea fans. But yeah, Maatsen playing further forward scored 2 against a very, very poor Wrexham side by the looks of things.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag to the teams that are coming over. I watched Arsenal play the MLS All-Stars last night in an utterly pointless game. Wayne Rooney was asked after the match. He's been given the players 2 days before the game. They all come from different clubs, all different nationalities. He's never worked with any of them apart from Benteke, who plays for him at DC United. And they got beat 5-0. And an American journalist asked him, what he'd learned from that game to help him hone his craft. And Rooney said nothing. So it was a pointless affair. But Arsenal looked pretty good for what it's worth. They had a full squad out with Declan Rice and everyone. So some of them are taking it seriously and some of them are doing a marketing trip like Chelsea, basically. Yeah. We've got quite a lot of friendlies now, haven't we? I mean, what we added this week since we last were on the podcast? Mainz has been added. Benfica has been added. It's a mini European tour now, isn't it?
Prepping us for the season after next, isn't it? That's the thing. Europa Conference League, but like I said earlier, I think it's a brilliant program. But there's obviously the disappointment that we're not playing anyone at home, and I do wonder kind of how well the self-service kiosks are going to work for the City game, not having had the chance to test them out. I think if I was the new catering department, I'd want some kind of test before, there's 21,500 people trying to order a burger at half time. But that lineup, I think, if you look at the quality of the opposition, we start with Genk. Genk, I think, won the regular season in Belgium, then finished second when it breaks down into the playoffs. Betis, no slouches. You've obviously got the Pellegrini kind of company reunion there. But as I said earlier, these feel like teams that are going to be in that mini league of Palace, West Ham, Brighton, that Brentford, those teams that we're probably going to see ourselves competing with for anywhere from 7th down to 12th, perhaps. So I think it's been meticulously planned by company. And it's given plenty of Burnley fans a good chance to dig out the old passports and get abroad for a bit. And I'm sure they'll enjoy it. I'm just hoping the club are going to start streaming some of these games.
Yeah, no, they've got to, haven't they? Benfica, perhaps a little bit of a higher category than that. I think.
Yeah, Portuguese champions, but again, that's that nice little test, and then we go to Mainz for the kind of final warm-up game before City, when company will probably play a side you would expect to line up 80% perhaps against City. So, but yeah, there'll be a good test. I just think it's gone are the days of Shrewsbury away and Aki Stanley, Hyde United, things like that. We've played all them behind closed doors, haven't we? Those kind of running through the leagues games.
Marsden Building Society Lancashire Trophy. That's the one.
I missed the Manx Cup.
Yeah.
The Manx Cup.
Yeah.
It makes no sense for them to not have a home game, though, does it? It's like a no-brainer, particularly when tickets are going to be quite scarce for the coming season. A pre-season friendly against decent opposition at Turf Moor might be the only chance some people are going to get to see the team this season, given we've sold out our first 8 home games. So and also it's a money spinner as well, isn't it? They're going to make more out of 22,000 at Turf Moor paying 15 quid for a friendly than they will off these watches or these bits of the net that they're selling off, aren't they? Surely.
Is it logistical? I mean, there's been a bit of work going down there, isn't there, on Harry Potts Way, Yorkshire Street?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I didn't think about that. Yeah, they don't know when the kind of
whether that's an issue.
Yeah, some very nice claret and blue flagstones now outside of the Bob Lord stand entrance. I noticed. I think Turfcast
looks proper.
Put some pictures on, but it does look like it could be quite nice. That kind of strip in front of the Bob Lord stand now,
where we used to stand chanting Teesdale out on that bit.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So it's an interesting. I must admit, I had a quick look at flights from Miami to Lisbon because I really fancy that one. I've been to that ground. They're not playing at the Stadium of Light, unfortunately. They're playing at Belenenses Stadium, which is just above the monastery Belen. Really nice part of Lisbon, and ground where Jose Mourinho played as a player for their reserves in his undistinguished playing career. I was going to say modest playing career, but nothing about Mourinho's particularly modest, is it? Left backs then. So maybe Martin we get, which I think could be great. I'd take him on a year's loan all day. One left back who's not coming to Burnley, but apparently turned us down, is Benjamin Mendy. Legal warning for Woody on this one. Mendy, of course, got himself in trouble, let's say, at Manchester City, court cases and so on. He's gone back to France. Would have been quite a debate had we signed Mendy, I think. No, Justin?
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, obviously, completely acquitted on all charges, but I just think there would have been far too much noise around it, and we don't need that kind of distraction, do we?
Lad himself has said he just wants away from Manchester, doesn't he?
And you can't blame that. Whatever went on, he probably wants a fresh start, doesn't he? Yeah.
If he signs for Burnley, he's in this. It's the same area. Just get away. It's a new start. Yeah.
From a football point of view, what he was like as a 45 million left back. Maybe not what City hoped he was going to be, but certainly like tremendous power and pace going forward. The other one, Matt Doherty of Tottenham, formerly of Wolves, going back to Wolves apparently, but there was a link with Burnley. I think that would have been an interesting one. Connor Roberts probably wouldn't agree, but I think that would have been a good signing, Matt Doherty. Thoughts on that one, or bullet dodged?
Yeah, I think again, you look at that kind of Premier League experience. It didn't quite work out at Spurs, did it? Spent latter part of last season at Atletico Madrid, where again I don't think it quite works out for him. I think he'll do well at Wolves. He knows the place. He was brilliant at Wolves. That earned him his move to Spurs. Again, we were kind of, kind of small links with him. I didn't think we'd ever get him, but yeah, when you look at it, you kind of think, you know what? I think he'd have fit that system. I think he'd have been the kind of player we're looking for. I'm quite happy with the right back in Roberts. I think Roberts proved last year that transition, that move into central midfield when needed, etc., etc. I think he was superb. So I'm not too disappointed that we're going to start the season probably with Roberts, but I do think Doxy could have probably played quite a good role for us.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, I said on the first podcast, I'd be looking for an alternative to Roberts, not to replace him because I like him as well, but I don't think we've got good enough cover there because I don't really think we want to be going into tough Premier League games with Vitinho at right back if something, Roberts was injured or suspended. But so maybe we are looking at that position. I don't know. Right, final item. JJ Watt took to social media with a little video of him showing his American followers and his many, many millions of followers how to make a Benny and Hot, and he wasn't impressed. Woody, was this disrespectful to Burnley's fine tradition of the Benny and Hot?
I'll tell you what worried me more than anything out of that video was how he got a boiling pan, a so-called boiling pan of water off his stove, managed to spill most of it all over his hand, and we saw no third degree burns, screaming, hollering, or whatever. So I refute that it was actually Benny and or hot in that particular glass. So no wonder he thought it was shit. It was just tap water.
the other thing is, it does show, like, one of the things in America that always amazed me is how no one has kettles, right? And even multi-millionaire NFL players are boiling water. Obviously, they never have a brew. It's just coffee into out of a filter machine or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was a bit weird. I mean, Justin, you thought he missed a trick.
Absolutely. I mean, there's quite a good story behind why Burnley fans drink Benny and Hot, isn't there? And maybe he doesn't know that story, but he could have told that story, and that would have been a much more interesting video than pouring lukewarm water over his hands would have been, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. He also suggested that his final comment was that we need a new drink. So I'm not sure. See, this is Americans for you, like, you know, God bless them. But
you've got to keep the Benny and Hart. I mean, we give it away as a man of the match prize, don't we? I remember asking Dwight McNeil a couple of years ago whether he'd ever had a Benny and Hart, and he kind of looked at me and said, I have no idea what it even is. And he was carrying like a special edition got a bottle of Benedictine, which is what we give away as a man of the match prize when the kind of sponsors man of the match is a bottle of Benny. But I love it. I think it's still a legal requirement, I think, in Burnley for everybody to have a bottle of it at the back of their drinks cupboard alongside.
I also believe that Sean Dyche used to gargle Benedictine every morning, and that's sort of part of the reason why his voice sounded the way it did. That's what somebody told me that. I don't know if it's true.
To swill down the worms.
Yeah.
Chris, if we did have another drink, if we did have a JJ Watt endorsed Burnley's new mega drink, what would it be?
Pint of Moorhouses. After me, wouldn't it? Pint of Moorhouses.
Just on Moorhouses, right? I went to a gig in Manchester yesterday. That didn't happen because the water was off at the Eagle Inn. I went to see Christian Madden, keyboard player extraordinaire from Colne and Burnley. Guess how much we paid for 2 pints of Moorhouses Blonde Witch in the Blackfriar pub in Salford?
£14.
Oh, you're not far. 13 quid. £6.50. A pint of Moorhouses.
You can't get a pint for less than £6 round here. You can't get a pint for less than £6.
Honestly,
that's the going rate these days.
It's £2.80 in the Bridge Beer House in Burnley. So yeah, I'm afraid. My mate Boothie took that one on the chin. 13 quid for 2 pints in a pub that, when he lived in Salford, was just a red brick Boddington's Boozer, and it's now one of these bijou type restaurant type pubs. But yeah, £6.50 for a pint of Moorhouses. So you'd need JJ Watt's CBS salary to afford to drink Moorhouses.
JJ Watt's got to be bringing Bud Light, hasn't he? That's where he'd be going.
Let's not go there. No, I can see a microbrewery though. JJ Watt's Claret and Blue microbrewery. I can see that one. Yeah, well, I think we've got to the end. I need a drink after all that. So we've ended on brand, whinging about the price of a pint, haven't we? So there you go. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much indeed for listening again to From the Be-All End. You can follow us on @Beehole Podcast on Twitter and everywhere else. Please do, when you listen to us, give us a little rating or subscribe or leave us a review so that more people get to spot us. We've had some really, really encouraging signs with our audience figures over the last couple of weeks. And if anyone's interested in sponsoring us as well, they can also get in touch via our Twitter feed. And lots and lots of plans in the pipeline for the start of the season. It's getting nearer and nearer and more exciting, isn't it? So thanks very much. Thanks a lot, guys. And see you all next week.